in the depths of Scandinavia's forests, where sunlight barely reaches the ground and silence feels alive, whispers of an enigmatic figure persist. The Huldra, a spirit of the wild both revered and feared, has haunted the Nordic imagination for centuries. But who or what is she? The Huldra, in Scandinavian folklore, is described as a strikingly beautiful woman. Her long, flowing hair and captivating gaze draw travelers into her presence. But there's a hidden side to her beauty. A closer look reveals her hollow back, like the decaying interior of a tree, or a tail, often hidden beneath her dress, a mark of her connection to the untamed forest. Legends paint her as both a protector of nature and a force to be reckoned with. Those who treat her forest with respect might receive her blessings, safe passage, abundant harvests, or even wealth. But those who harm her domain risk falling victim to her vengeance. The duality of her nature, both benevolent and deadly, has made her one of the most compelling figures in Nordic folklore. Beyond her striking physical features, the Huldra's legend often centers around her role as a guardian of the wild. Some tales suggest she is an ancient spirit bound to the forest by a curse, while others describe her as a being created to protect nature from humanity's encroachment. Her tail, reminiscent of a cow's, is said to signify her connection to fertility and the natural world, while her hollow back represents the vulnerability hidden behind her beauty. Historical encounters. The Disappearing Woodsman, Norway, 1851. Lars Hansen, an experienced woodsman from Lillehammer, was known for his skill and reliability. On a crisp autumn morning in 1851, he set out into the forest for a routine logging expedition. He had recently accepted a large order for timber and ventured deeper into the forest than usual, eager to meet the demand. When Lars didn't return home that evening, his family grew concerned. By the following morning, neighbors formed a search party. The woods were vast and treacherous, with steep ravines and dense underbrush. After 2 days, they found Lars sitting at the base of a towering pine tree, his eyes wide with terror. Lars described being drawn to a melodic hum, unlike anything he had heard before. He followed the sound until he stumbled upon a clearing where a woman with golden hair awaited him. She was breathtakingly beautiful, but something about her seemed wrong. Her shadow stretched unnaturally long, twisting like tree roots across the forest floor. She spoke in a voice that was both soothing and unsettling, promising him wealth and prosperity if he followed her deeper into the woods. Lars hesitated, and that hesitation seemed to anger her. Her enchanting smile vanished, and her eyes became sharp and predatory. The melodic hum turned into a low, guttural growl. Panicked, Lars fled, running blindly through the forest until exhaustion overcame him. In the days that followed, Lars struggled to resume his daily life. He often woke in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, convinced he could hear her haunting melody outside his window. His once steady hands trembled, and he avoided the forest entirely. Neighbors whispered about his ordeal, some accusing him of angering the Huldra, while others pitted him as a victim of forces beyond his control. His story gained wider attention when it was published in the Lillehammer Gazette. Folklorists noted that Lars' description of her shadow and the guttural growl matched older accounts of the Huldra. Local elders claimed they had known similar tales passed down through generations, warning against venturing too far into the woods alone. Rituals to appease the Huldra became more common, with villagers leaving offerings of bread, milk, or even silver coins at the base of trees. The Song in the Forest, Sweden, 1927. In Dalarna, a quiet farming village surrounded by dense woods, Erik Johansson was known as a practical man. One summer evening in 1927, Erik set out to search for a cow that had wandered into the forest. Equipped with nothing more than a lantern and his voice, he called for the animal as twilight settled. As he ventured deeper into the woods, a haunting melody floated through the air. It was soft, almost ethereal, and seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Unable to resist, Eric followed the sound until he reached a small clearing. There, perched on a mossy rock, was a woman with golden hair cascading over her shoulders. She hummed a tune that seemed to weave itself into the very fabric of the forest. But as Eric approached, the enchantment broke. When the woman turned to face him, her back was exposed, a hollow void, like the decaying interior of a tree trunk. Eric's blood ran cold. He tried to flee, but his legs felt heavy, as if roots were gripping him in place. Summoning all his willpower, he broke free and ran until he reached the safety of his farm. In the weeks that followed, Eric became withdrawn and uneasy. His family noticed how he avoided the woods entirely, even refusing to fetch firewood. When asked, he would mutter about the woman in the clearing and warn others to stay away from the melody. Years later, Eric's diary was discovered by his descendants and donated to the Dalarna Folklore Museum. In it, he had written, "Beware the song that calls from the woods. It is not meant for man." The diary became a cornerstone of local folklore, fueling both fear and fascination. Some villagers later came forward with tales of hearing strange songs or glimpsing figures in the woods, cementing the legend of the Huldra in the region. Folklorists studying Eric's account noted similarities to earlier tales of the Huldra. They pointed out that the melody described by Eric matched accounts from 19th century Norway, suggesting that the Huldra's influence spanned borders and generations. The Blacksmith's Visitor, Denmark, 1812. In the small village of Skanderborg, nestled near the edge of an ancient forest, a blacksmith named Anders Madsen became the center of a tale that would echo through generations. Known for his skill and diligence, Anders often worked late into the night, his forge casting flickering shadows against the walls of his workshop. One chilly evening in 1812, as Anders hammered away at a horseshoe, he noticed a faint melody drifting in through the open window. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, unlike any song he had ever heard. He tried to ignore it, assuming it was a trick of the wind, but the melody grew louder, almost beckoning him. When he looked up, he saw a woman standing just outside the forge. She was stunning, with golden hair that glowed in the firelight and a flowing dress that seemed almost alive. Without a word, she stepped inside. Anders, though unsettled, found himself unable to look away. She pointed to a broken plow blade on the workbench and gestured for him to repair it. Her movements were graceful yet deliberate, and her silence only added to the eerie atmosphere. As Anders worked, he felt her gaze on him, heavy and unrelenting. He noticed that her reflection in the polished metal of the forge tools was distorted. Her back appeared hollow, like the decaying trunk of a tree. Panic gripped him, but he forced himself to continue, afraid of angering her. When the repair was finished, the woman handed him a pouch of coins, silver pieces that shone unnaturally bright. She left without a word, disappearing into the darkness. Anders bolted the door behind her and prayed for dawn to come quickly. The following morning, Anders opened the pouch, only to find it filled with withered leaves instead of silver. The villagers, hearing his story, believed he had encountered the Huldra. They warned him never to accept work from strangers after dark and urged him to leave offerings outside his workshop to appease her. Years later, Anders' grandchildren found his tools hidden in the attic, untouched since that night. The plow blade, still bearing the marks of his hammer, had rusted completely, but the story of the blacksmith's visitor lived on as a cautionary tale about the dangers of ignoring the boundaries between the human world and the wild. Modern sightings. The Silent Woman, Sweden, 2015. In the summer of 2015, two hikers exploring the remote forests of Jämtland reported an unsettling encounter. They described seeing a woman standing perfectly still among the trees, dressed in what appeared to be traditional Nordic clothing. Though her face was obscured by her hair, they felt an intense sensation of being watched. Curious yet cautious, the hikers approached. The woman turned slowly and walked deeper into the woods without making a sound. When the hikers reached the spot where she had been standing, they found no trace of her, only an unnatural silence that seemed to blanket the area. After the encounter, one of the hikers began to experience vivid nightmares. He dreamt of the woman's face, her hollow back, and the oppressive silence of the forest. He later sought the advice of a folklorist, who connected the sighting to older tales of the Huldra. The story was featured in the Jämtland Chronicle, reigniting interest in the Huldra legend and prompting locals to share their own encounters. Some locals claimed that similar figures had been sighted in the area for decades. An elderly resident recalled a story from her youth about a hunter who disappeared after pursuing a beautiful woman into the forest. The Fisherman's Tale, Norway, 1998. Olav, a fisherman who often camped by a secluded lake in Telemark, had always felt a strange connection to the area. The locals spoke in hushed tones about mysterious occurrences by the lake, but Olav dismissed them as old superstitions, until one fateful night in 1998. He awoke to the sound of footsteps circling his tent, accompanied by a faint, melodic voice calling his name. Grabbing a flashlight, he stepped outside to see a figure standing at the water's edge. Her back was turned, but her long hair shimmered in the moonlight. When he called out, the figure turned slightly, as if acknowledging his presence, and then vanished into thin air. Shaken, Olav searched the area and found a trail of footprints in the wet sand. The prints were unnervingly narrow and elongated, with sharp edges that didn't resemble human feet. The encounter left Olav deeply unsettled. He rarely spoke of it, but those who knew him noticed how he avoided the lake afterward. His testimony, collected by a regional folklore society, matched older accounts of Huldra sightings in the region. Despite skepticism, the story became part of a larger narrative about the Huldra's connection to Norway's lakes and streams. Further research into the lake's history revealed older tales of disappearances and unexplained phenomena. Some locals believed the Huldra protected the lake from overfishing or pollution, reinforcing her role as a guardian spirit. Rituals to honor her presence were revived, with offerings left by the water's edge. The symbolism of the Huldra. The Huldra represents the duality of nature, its beauty and its danger. Her hollow back could symbolize the hidden perils of the wild, while her enchanting exterior reflects nature's allure. Folklorists have noted that similar figures exist across cultures. The Slavic Rusalka, the Japanese Uriai, and even certain Celtic myths feature female spirits tied to nature, embodying humanity's complex relationship with the wild. In today's world, where forests are rapidly disappearing, the Huldra's story feels more urgent than ever. Her legend reminds us of the importance of respecting nature, before it's too late. Modern environmental movements have even embraced the Huldra as a symbol of preservation. Artists and writers depict her as a warning, a reminder that the natural world must be protected. Her stories continue to inspire a blend of fear and admiration, echoing the delicate balance between humanity and the wild. Would you like to experience Huldra for yourself? Legends from Scandinavia suggest that the Huldra appears either to those who unknowingly wander into her domain or to those who dare to summon her intentionally. For the bold, there are rituals described in old folklore said to draw her attention. One of the most well-known methods involves venturing deep into the forest at dusk, to a place where the air feels heavy with silence and the trees seem to hold secrets. At the base of an ancient tree, one must leave an offering, traditionally bread, milk, or honey. The gift must be placed with respect, accompanied by a whispered request for her presence. Some say a haunting melody might follow, a sign she has heard the call. However, caution is paramount. Folklore warns that summoning the Huldra is not without risk. Those who approach her with insincere motives or fail to show reverence may face her wrath rather than her favor.